everyone, and welcome back to another week of What It Takes to Be a Rock Star. We're episode 19. I can't believe it. And I'm so excited, and I'm really, really happy because this week I have a very special guest. His name is Randy, and he is a music lawyer and also a music manager for many, many years. And I'm just excited to have this other perspective from the music industry here because Randy's worked really closely with a lot of bands for a long time, and he's actually been in some bands in the past, so he's done it all. And yeah, he's like a wealth of wisdom. He has a lot to say, a lot of good advice for people, and he actually had his own podcast for a while, which it still exists, and there may or may not be episodes in the future, but there's a huge backlog of like hundreds of episodes that is linked in the description below. And also in the description below, there's a lot of fun things down there. You're going to find links. You're going to find a link to a playlist with all of the bands that have been on this podcast. You're going to find a Discord channel that you could join for free, and you could talk with other people who've been listening to the podcast about what they think and the conversations that come up. It's been really fun. People have been joining in a lot more recently, so that's been really great. And yeah, there's links to everything down there. So please check it out and subscribe to this podcast or follow it if you haven't already and if you're enjoying it. And if you aren't already, you can watch this episode on YouTube along with almost all the other episodes. And that will be linked in the description below as well. And without any further ado, here is my conversation with Randy.
I'm really happy you're here because I feel like there's like a trillion directions we could take. And
Sure.
yeah, you're just like, I don't know, you're very different than the other guests that I got. Because, I've mostly just had people in bands who just tour.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it was really cool like that I have the opportunity to get your side of things, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you're ready, we could just dive right in.
I was born
Like,
ready.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. I would love for you to just tell everyone who you are and what you do because I know it's a long list. So you can
Yeah,
go ahead.
well, my name is Randy Ojeda. I am a music attorney. I'm also an artist manager. I also have my own podcast called Cigar City Radio. But these days, I spend most of my time doing the music attorney thing. So I run my own law firm called Randy Ojeda Law. I'm based out of Tampa, Florida, but I work with artists from all over the country, and then some. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask because like I knew you switched into doing music law, but you
Yeah.
were managing. You've been managing for a really long time,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, very long time, like almost 10 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering like how you were handling doing that plus a podcast plus all the other
Yeah.
things that you do.
So yeah, these days I mostly do music law. I'm still managing a couple bands, one of them being Ganser from Chicago. Um, but yeah, no, I during actually right after the last time we saw each other, so right around the pandemic was when I kind of shifted gears and went full on into music law. I wasn't traveling as much. I wasn't doing as much with the artist management. A lot of my clients, unfortunately, the bands just couldn't sustain during the pandemic. I mean, it was such a hard time for everybody. So I came out the other side, running a law firm of all things, and specifically focused on the independent music sector, independent musicians, independent labels, managers, and really, using my expertise to guide people. Not only with legal advice, but just kind of general industry strategy. It seemed like a good fit for me, and also um, something that's sorely needed. Like there's not a lot of music lawyers, and especially not a lot of music lawyers that are working with independent artists. I mean, obviously Taylor Swift and Post Malone have their lawyers, but what about everybody else? So I wanted to make sure that I could provide quality legal representation for anybody, not just the people that could afford it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think
Yeah.
you're the third music lawyer I've ever met, and I've only met two of you in person.
There you
And
go.
I've been in music for like 20 years. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I saw such a need for it because also, while I was doing management too, I did A&R for Symphonic Distribution. So I signed a lot of artists on that side of the deal, and I kind of saw that the artist would then go and hand over the contract to somebody that does divorces or traffic accidents and say like, hey, can you look at my music contract? And it's like, that's not really what you want. Like, you want somebody that really understands the industry and the nuances of music and what it all means. So I thought, somebody that actually understood the industry but also understood the legal side of things was rare.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, was going to law school, was that on your mind for a while before you actually did that, or?
So it was interesting because I went to law school first. Actually, I went to
Oh,
law school before I became a manager, and while I was in law school, I started managing a rapper named IDK, and then when I graduated law school, I sort of formed the whole Cigar City management company and started working with a bunch of bands, and um, then over time, then the pandemic happened, and that's when I made my shift. But I had already been to law school actually, and I had the legal background, so that always really helped with management. But it wasn't my core role until I took the bar exam and really changed gears.
well, that's cool. I had no
Yeah,
idea. You
yeah,
never
yeah.
know. This is why I love
You
doing a
never,
podcast, because
you
it's
never
just like
know.
I like don't know anyone. I'm finding out.
Yeah, you don't really know anybody until you get them on a podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially in music, you like see them at a show and you're like, yeah, I know that person. Like,
right, right.
you see their face all the time, but then like in reality, you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know they
Yeah,
like cool music, but that's as far as it goes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you have to do more school when the pandemic hit, or you just had to like study for the
I just
exam?
had to study for the bar exam, yeah, and take that. So, and I think it's
What?
behind me right here is my bar passage.
Ooh,
There you go.
congrats.
So yeah,
That's
it was a
wonderful.
thing. That was a fun, very not fun time was studying
Yeah.
for the bar, but it was the pandemic. I wasn't going anywhere, so if you're ever gonna sit at home and study, 8 hours a day, then might as well do it during a global pandemic. You
Yeah.
know.
How long did you study for?
Months, like
Wow.
probably like 6 months, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Well,
yeah,
congratulations.
yeah. No, it's behind me now, so now I don't. Sometimes I still wake up, in like panic mode, like it's the morning of the exam and I gotta go. Like I have like these nightmares about it, but
Oh,
it's all in the past.
yeah.
Yeah.
I still get like school nightmares all the time where like suddenly I have a nightmare where I'm in college and I didn't do homework for the last 7 years and they're like, you need to make this all up.
Yeah, right, right. I feel like somebody somewhere is gonna. Sometimes it's gonna catch up on me. Like
Yeah.
somebody's gonna say that I owe something to a professor or something. You never know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, cool. So in law school, just curious, there isn't like a special like music law class, or is there now, or like
Oh
how
yeah.
did
There
you merge it?
there's a couple courses on music law. They kind of just lump it into entertainment law in general, and there's like specific uh days where you talk about music or you talk about movies or commercials or whatever, and oftentimes they also lump it in with sports too, so it's like entertainment and sports law. So I took all the classes that I could take on the subject because I had already started managing artists and just wanted to know as much about the industry as possible, but a lot of it you really just have to learn on your own. It's kind of like being in a band, like you just have to get out there and start doing it and start, you know, you make mistakes and you correct them and you learn from them and you just keep moving and keep going. So I definitely learned most of what I know about the industry from just being an artist manager, being an A&R, working in the industry, and then kind of bringing it all together.
Cool. Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool fit, and that makes you like, you know, it's like you get it. You're like a music person, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You'd be surprised at how many lawyers in or entertainment and music lawyers like don't really seem to like music, and I'm like, why are you doing this? You know, like you can make so much more money if you just go and do corporate law or whatever, you know, BS you want to do, you know, but like you got to really love music to be in this industry, I think. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, like something, I'm still learning who my listeners are because this podcast is obviously pretty new, but I
Yeah.
do hear from a lot of other musicians, obviously, who are like interested in having a career, building a career. Obviously, there's millions of us on this planet who are just trying
Yeah.
to have a career in music. And then I hear from a lot of non-musicians too, who are they're just their minds are just blown open about like the music world. But with all, I mean, I want to be able to give both those people something interesting to hear. But like, so I think a good question for everyone would be like, what is something that is really important for a musician, even like a smaller musician, that has to do with what you do,
Mm-hmm.
to do like a band agreement or a split sheet or
Yeah.
something. Like, what is something that you think is really important that someone who's just playing in their band in Brooklyn or something might not be thinking about?
Yeah, well, good thing you mentioned band agreements because band agreements are super important. It's like, you know, it's like an operating agreement for a company, but with your band specifically. So like kind of knowing, you know, who owns the band name, like who has the rights to play the different songs, and whatever kind of questions you need to figure out in terms of splitting profits or whatever, like all that's kind of figured out in a band agreement. So literally every single band should have a band agreement. And you know, kind of spoiler alert, I'm working on a way to make it very affordable for bands to do that. So, you know, just stay tuned. I'll have more info at some point on how to make a proper band agreement without having to spend a whole ton of money on lawyers to do it for you. So, I'm working on that, but that's not quite there yet. But the most practical thing for anybody just, you know, coming up in music or writing, even if you're just writing songs at home alone, you know, the best thing that you can do is register with a performing rights organization. So that's ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC in the US. And you know, just registering your own songs is so important. Like a lot of people don't know that you can actually get performance royalties for performing your own songs inside venues. So you can submit your set list every quarter and actually get money for the shows that you've played, on top of whatever you made at the show. You know, so it's just so important to register all your songs, and that's like the fundamental, like first thing you should do. Every musician should do that. If you're listening to this and you don't have ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, you need to register with one of them like right now. Like press pause on the podcast, go sign up, and then
Go,
come
go,
back and
go.
hit play again. So that's
Yeah.
what you got to do. It's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Tara, my bandmate, for those
Yeah.
listening, in Gustav, T Heater,
Shout out to
Bridgman,
Tara.
whatever. Shout out Tara. Um, we sit down and do that for together, like in her kitchen. We'll put down all the shows that we played in like the last 4 months,
Yeah.
and just throw it in there because I'm the weirdo. I use ASCAP, even though it's just as good. And then everyone else
No.
in Gustav uses BMI, so she does the BMI people, and I do me for ASCAP.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love ASCAP. I mean, I have good relationships with all the pros, but um yeah, I think don't feel bad about using being the ASCAP person, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, no, everyone's like, oh, when I first heard about this, everyone's like, they're the same. They're exactly the same. And then I pick ASCAP, and then everyone I talk to, they're like BMI, 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 and I
Yeah.
swear, but I love ASCAP. Everyone, it's been great to me. Everything's been
I love
fine.
ASCAP too. You know, I can't I don't think I'm allowed to give an opinion one way or the other, but you know, I have had some easier times getting a hold of ASCAP support and getting problems resolved for clients with ASCAP than I have with BMI. So that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm
All
gonna
right,
say.
all right, yeah.
You
No
know.
opinions stated
Yeah, no,
here.
no, yeah. I think they're both great. They're both great organizations, but one of them is a little bit easier to deal with at times.
Wow.
You know.
Well, maybe because like less people that I know
Yeah,
are
I
over
mean
there
that
clogging up the place.
there is there. I think they are smaller, so yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, all right.
but
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah. So band agreement and get on ASCAP or BMI or CSAC.
Yeah,
I never tried.
definitely.
Yeah.
CSAC's great. It's just invitation only. So you
Okay.
kind of have to know somebody at CSAC, or you need to already be, you know, making some moves on with one of the other groups, and then they might invite you over to CSAC. But
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I was wondering. Cool.
you almost
Uh,
never see anybody with CSAC. No offense, CSAC. It's like it's a great organization, and they actually do a lot for their artists, and they like really go above and beyond because they are so selective. But it is selective.
okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a quick manager question because I know you're not
Okay.
doing that as much, but you are
Yeah.
managing Ganser, who is
I
killing
am.
it right
I'm
now.
wearing their
Yeah.
hat right
Yeah.
now. Nothing you
Yeah.
do matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did a tour with them, Gustav and Ganser, like three
Yeah.
three or 4 days or something. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was awesome. And then they went off and opened for Idols
They
with
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Hiller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And now
So
they are working on LP3. So they're working on their newest
ooh.
record right now. So I
Okay.
haven't even heard the mixes yet. So I'm excited to hear that. I'm supposed to get them like early next week. So, you know.
Hopefully you do get them early
I,
next week. You know, people
yeah.
say that all the time.
They say that, but Ganser's pretty good with deadlines. I got to give
Okay.
them that. Like they're on top of it. So I'm sure I'll hear it soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I wanted to ask because, I've talked to a bunch of bands on here, and some people, I talk to bands all the time anyway. This is why I started this podcast. But,
Yeah.
I've heard like, we want a manager just so bad. Like, that's just going to change everything for us.
Yeah.
And from your side of things, having been a manager, like, do you think that's true? Or do you think it's, the artist in the end, it's their responsibility to like make things happen?
Yeah, I mean, nobody's ever going to work as hard as you should be working, right? So, um, you can't expect a manager to come in and solve all of your problems for you, but um, a hardworking manager plus a hardworking band can be a really, really good fit, and can really, make waves because, if you find a good manager, there's generally somebody that has a skill set that you might not have as an artist, or you may have the skill set, but you don't want to be spending the time that you could be making music and recording and being creative used up on admin work and sending out emails and making connections. So if you can find a good manager to do that for you, I mean that's invaluable. I just think there are unfortunately so few managers that I would say are actually good managers. Not to shame anybody. Like I think, it's just unfortunately it's a hard thing to do. And a lot of times I suggest to artists, rather than you looking for a manager within the greater industry, kind of bring the industry to yourself and find somebody within your circle that has a skill set that really cares about you and wants to help. Like sometimes a manager with that's inexperienced but really passionate can be better than an experienced manager that's just like you're one of many on their roster. So um yeah, so be open to the newer managers or the friends of yours that may be able to fill that role. And I think that's something that people in the industry are starting to figure out now, because everybody wants to be an artist, everybody wants to be a musician, everybody wants to perform on stage, but there's so many behind the scenes roles that are just as fulfilling and just as great to be part of, and are sorely needed in all circles of the music industry. you know
Yeah, totally. And there's like a million musicians trying to do it all the time.
yeah, exactly. But to kind of answer your question, or you know you should try to let the managers come to you. Like if you're searching for a manager, um maybe it's the right time or maybe not, I don't know, but when it is the right time, like trust me, somebody will come knocking on your door. So
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because I know you've been managing for 10 years, you've been in music for forever, and like the industry just it changed so much. It's always changing, but it's changed so
yeah.
much where it feels like by the time that people want to work with you, you're pretty much already successful. I feel like.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you mean by success, of course, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunately the industry doesn't do as much true artist development as they used to back in the day. Supposedly, I don't know when they were doing this development, but apparently they were. So nowadays, and this goes with label deals or managers or booking agents. It's like you sort of need to prove yourself before somebody's going to take you on. So you almost have to put, you know, you have to hit a certain level before anybody's willing to jump on board, which is unfortunate because a lot of times, people never get to that level and they give up and we're without musicians. But um it does make sense from a business standpoint, just because already there's so little money in the industry that, to take on bands very, very early in their career, you're basically setting yourself up for several years of hard work and little to no money. So, finding bands that are already a bit more established, that are, that have something to manage is kind of the key ingredient there. But it can be kind of a bummer for both sides, because yeah, you might feel like you want a manager and you need a manager to hit that next level, but they're waiting for you to hit that next level before they manage you. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
catch
like
22,
that.
you know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
And this, like I said, the same thing goes with labels. Labels are the same way. Like, they want to see that you've already um done some numbers, on Spotify maybe, or that you've already, had some releases on Bandcamp, or that you've done some things before they're willing to take you on. And booking agents are especially like that. Like you know, it's almost like you need to do your DIY cross country tour all on your own, and then maybe a booking agent might be interested after that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
totally. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about like what you think about this, because I find that the numbers, like the more and more I dig into the music industry, it's like to get those numbers. Like if you
Hmm.
gave me $50,000 today, tomorrow I could have those numbers. I think like you
Sure.
like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you pay for the playlist, you pay for like it's
Yeah.
so like I that's the part that like frustrates I think a lot of musicians, is that like you can't have you can't even have a label that might be able to help you monetarily get to
Right.
that next level until you put your own $50,000. And if you're a broke musician, I don't know, like what do you think about like that whole thing where it's just like money can just fuel the thing in the end and like make you look better than the band next to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think while yes, money helps a lot, obviously, and can open a lot of doors and create opportunities for you. If it was just money alone that was required, then the major labels would be even more successful than they already are. But I think a big part of it is, um, there's something about really good music and a really good music scene, and um, you know, shows that you want to tell your friends about, and songs that you want to play for people, that you can't just buy your way into that. Like, you have to really be doing something special at times. And I think um it's yeah, it's a struggle, because obviously the money helps, but I think at the end of the day, I'm still, maybe it's naive of me, but I'm still a believer in good music. The cream rises to the top, right? So like the best music will be heard because of what it is, and not because it's being shoved in front of your face.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I hope so too.
I hope so, but I know we're kind of rare in that sense. Like the normal people out there that aren't in the music industry are much more susceptible to just ads and the songs that they hear in commercials and TV shows, and that being the way that they discover music, which is why music licensing is so important and sync licensing is so important, because that's a big way that people find music these days. Um, but that doesn't necessarily require upfront money, so you know.
Yeah. No, I wanted to talk to you about that because I've been thinking a lot about AI recently.
Oh no.
Making, yeah, no, I know. Well, I'm interested that you have that reaction because some people are
Yeah.
like, "What's the problem?" Um, but yeah, I'm like, sync licensing. For those who are listening who don't know what sync licensing is, it's when you get your music in TV shows, commercials, movies. Correct? Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that?
Yep.
lawyer like.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. You got it. You
All right.
knocked it out.
And for musicians and, for my bands, like that's been a way to make some actual real money from time to time. And it's
Yeah.
incredible. And now freaking computer people are training AI to basically make this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I see it as a threat to this like way that musicians can actually make money. And I'm sure there's a lot of musicians who just see it as like a tool that they could just use to poop out like sync songs in 10 seconds and then just make money that way too. But
Right.
yeah, I wanted to hear what your opinion was on that, and from like a lawyer perspective or manager perspective too.
Yeah, it's AI is like the new frontier, right? So it's a lot of the rules are kind of still being written and figured out with AI in general, but also AI in the music industry. And I think it's tough to figure out where it's going to go because I mean I don't I'm not a computer genius, so I don't know like what the evolution of AI looks like. But again, it's like one of those things where at least now you can still tell when something's made with AI, right? Like it's not quite right. Like you can use it for certain tools and you can use it in creative ways, like with the Beatles with their new song, and they used AI to like, fill in different voices and stuff. Like that's a cool way to use it as a tool. But when you create a whole song using I feel like people can tell, right? And
Yeah.
I think that um the more the world kind of gets connected in this AI way, the more people are going to be receptive and responsive to real, natural qualities. Um, and that's where something like a live performance is so important. Like an AI still can't perform live and make that connection that a band makes with the audience. And um, I think that's one of the most important parts of the industry to me is that physical connection. So um, am I worried for artists? A little bit, a little bit. I definitely think that AI is gonna replace some things and take over some aspects of an artist's journey. But um, again, just like I'm hopeful that the best music will rise to the top. I'm hopeful that real, authentic music will be sought after and not something that's cast to the side for computer rock.
Yeah.
So
Computer rock. Yeah. I
yeah.
feel the same. And it's like funny though, because like I'll jam with like, my what do you call it? Digital audio workstation, which,
Sure. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, people probably hated that when it first came out because it's like, little synth sounds on the computer. And I think I just get annoyed when someone who doesn't play music can make something that sounds almost as good as something that cost me like $2,000 a song, to make
Yeah.
in like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
button or something. I'm like, that's a little unfair, but like, I don't know. I bet, it'll all work its way
But
into something.
I still think a talented artist and a creative person can make that whatever button they press in the AI software can do it better. Like I still
Yeah.
think that there's got to be some level of creativity there. You know,
Yeah. We'll
kind of like
see.
it was with digital audio stations and synths and stuff. Like, yeah, you can just turn on the arpeggio and hit the button and let it play whatever, or you can really refine it and make it into your own sound. So I think people are going to start finding ways to do that with AI.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Yeah. I'm not too scared. I go in like waves of like one day I'm like it's over, like music's
Yeah.
over. Like and then
Yeah.
the next day I'm just like you where I'm like it's going to pendulum swing back cuz I
Yep.
always think everything goes way too far one way and everyone's going to go into computer rock land and like
Right.
make boatloads of money and all the musicians at the bottom are going to trickle off into, never goodbye
Yeah.
land.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day people are gonna be like, wait, you play guitar? That's
Right.
so cool. I don't have, when we're all like 80 and like we're just
Yeah.
playing on the porch or something. Like it,
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully, hopefully it comes back,
I hope so.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and
it's,
there's some examples of like, true like authentic music being getting popular again. I mean, look at like like an MJ Lenderman or somebody like that, who's like, you know,
I don't
very
know who that is.
You don't know MJ Lenderman? Oh man,
No, I'm gonna
gotta
write that
check him
down.
out.
I
Yeah.
feel so embarrassed on this podcast because anytime I talk to anyone, they're like, "Oh yes, like so and so," and I'm like, "I have no idea who that is."
Yeah. Well, it was just the first example I thought of
Okay,
somebody that's like playing guitar and
okay,
you know
yeah.
like not using uh artificial stuff to make their sound. Like he sounds like a old like a Neil Young, you know, or something
Oh,
like that. So it's
cool. Oh,
yeah.
great. I'm
So it's
excited.
very it's a thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
MJ Lenderman.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
They were in the band Wednesday. I don't think they're in Wednesday anymore. But
Oh, wait, was that like a recent
yeah,
update?
they like recently left Wednesday.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw okay. I saw pictures of that and then people in the comments were like, "Who is that?" And like people were destroying them being like, "You don't know who that is?"
Yeah. Yeah,
And
no,
I was like,
there's a
"Let me
lot of
walk."
that going on. Yeah.
I'm like, "Let me get out of here before I get like eaten by all the wolves in the comments
Right,
section."
right. Yeah, never
Si-
read the comments. Yeah.
Silently walk away.
Yeah.
um I really love that you said that you're working on a way to have musicians be able to do a band agreement for not like tons and tons of money because it's not a surprise. Musicians don't make tons and tons of money.
Yep.
Um but so yeah, that's very cool of you and you know, obviously you could probably be charging much more, but why
Sure.
did you decide to do that?
Um, just because, like I said, it's every single band needs a band agreement. Because let's be real, I mean, it's like death, taxes, and bands breaking up, right? Like those are the things that you just can't get away from. You know, like bands are just gonna break up. Like it's inevitable for 99% of bands, and when they break up, I see so many issues over control and ownership and naming rights and all these different things that you don't really, you know, you think that you'll figure it out when the band breaks up, but then the band breaks up, you're all on bad terms, everybody hates each other, nobody wants to negotiate, and everything's a mess. So if you can figure out those things early on, then when the inevitable happens, you're covered. Like you know where everybody stands, and it's just so needed that you know, I've been just figuring out a way to like boil it down to its essential elements so that, you know, a band can kind of just go in, you know, fill some things out and then get something that's at least workable, you know. Um, so it's just it's taking more like programming time than I thought it was. So I'm
Oh,
still working
yeah.
on that, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's the goal is I want bands to be able to do it because you know I don't want cost to be the thing that stops you and then you go and the band breaks up or you know somebody leaves the band or somebody new joins the band or whatever and you know you don't know what to do and you end up in a bad situation rather than just getting it all sorted from the beginning.
All right, we got death, taxes, bands breaking up, and then the other inevitable thing in this world is sorry cables becoming the best cables known to mankind. I love these cables. They're amazing. They're colorful. They're wonderful. And made by a wonderful little company based out of LA. And thank you, Sorry Cables, for sponsoring today's episode and this podcast. And you can check them out at sorrycables.com and tell them I sent you.
You know.
Yeah. Do you ever have to deal with like that stuff, like a band breaking up and then they come to you like a divorce or something?
Oh yeah, all
Yeah.
the time. And
Oh,
sometimes it can be
okay.
really ugly. You know, I can't name names, of course, but like there's been um some pretty prominent bands that I've either, you know, represented the band when a member leaves or represented an individual member when they leave a band and um you know, without a solid agreement going into it, like that can really screw things up, you know.
Wow.
Um it just messes with copyright issues and with, you know, branding issues, trademark stuff. Like, you know, do you get to continue the band? You know, as you know, like there's two Sublimes now. You know, I don't know if
No.
you know this. There's like Sublime with Gabe. I think I don't remember if his name is Gabe Newell or if the son's name is Gabe Newell, but there's Sublime with the son of the original singer.
Yes.
And then there's Sublime with Rome, who I don't know who Rome is, but
Uh,
like there's two Sublimes touring right now, and like there's confusion over which Sublime you're booking and which Sublime you're going to see because there's literally
uh,
two of them. And I would imagine that Sublime just didn't have a, an agreement in place when, you know, their singer died and things happen, and who owns the name, who gets to carry on that mantle. I guess nobody really claimed it, so now everybody gets to claim it. I could start a Sublime with Randy and go and tour. So
yeah. Hey, you want to start with? Let's go.
ideas,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That reminded me of a couple things. It reminded me, I know, like, I feel like Pink Floyd, that was a really ugly breakup.
Yeah.
Like Roger Waters went off. Like, they still try to play the same songs, and it also reminded me of the Misfits, because
Yeah. Yeah, that's another one.
Danzig, right? He
Yep.
like owned all the music, but then they owned the name, so that's why there's so much Misfits merch in the world, because they
Right.
like couldn't sell the music or
And I think
something.
now they tour as like the original Misfits or something like that. Like
Yeah.
yeah, so these things can get pretty ugly, and if, the band is a popular band, they can be, there could be money involved in this.
Yeah,
So,
that's so funny, because when I like think of, your life as a music lawyer, I'm like, oh, that's fun. Like the early stuff, I'm like, oh, you have the band agreement and like the record label contract or the publishing
yeah,
deal contract, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, you're like dealing with some serious stuff sometimes.
sometimes, yeah, but I would say for the most part, um I always tell artists that if you're calling me, it's usually because something good is happening and you've been offered something, or you're trying to, protect your rights in a deal or whatever. And, usually I'm the lawyer that you want to be talking to because it means something significant is happening in your career. But there are definitely situations where, it's not a fun conversation. So,
Yeah.
it really depends. But most of
Yeah.
the time it's pretty fun, and I get to, really help artists and producers and musicians like keep doing the thing that they love doing. And that's always been like, that's why I became an artist manager. That's why I'm a lawyer now, is because I just want to see artists continue to do the thing that they love. I've always been like a support character, like not to get all Dungeons and Dragons on you or whatever, but I
Wait,
like,
what are called, NPCs or something?
no,
No,
not
no,
an
no,
NPC.
no.
I, I
What
I'm
is that?
like like I like to buff people. I like to make
Okay,
people
okay.
better, and I like
Cool.
to, I don't want to be the one directly, doing the thing, but I want to
Yeah.
help the people that do the thing better.
Yeah. Not
Um
that wasn't me. I was thinking of like when you're going through like a video game, and then you find the person who's like, now try this or something.
oh yeah, well there's a little
Right.
bit of that too for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I'm definitely like you know, I like being in a support role and just seeing my, people that I care about thrive. That's reward for me.
Yeah.
So
Playing drums in a band is a lot like that.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Oh, so is playing bass. I'm a bass
Yeah.
player.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that the rhythm section is kind of that. Like you're creating space and allowing the lead parts to shine.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still people love drum solos.
Yes.
Not so much bass solos, but drum solos, yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Gustav put me on the spot in New Year's Eve
Oh
at like
no.
2 in the morning. I was like, no, wait, no. and
Well,
I think Tara made everyone lie down on the floor and then made me do
yeah,
the drum solo.
that sounds about right. That sounds like
Yep.
Tara.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, because like in drum mode, you're like, yeah, I'm just in the back. No one's looking at me. I'm
Yeah,
hanging
yeah. You're
out. And
just
then all of a sudden they're like,
yeah.
everyone look at her. You're
Yeah.
like, wait,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Well, you got to do it. You got to bust out your inner Neil Peart and,
Yeah.
just go
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah. You still play bass?
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
something?
Yeah. As much as I can.
Yeah.
I'm not like in a band or anything anymore, but yeah, I still noodle around, every now and then,
Cool.
when I can. So,
Yeah. What kind
Yeah.
of bands were you in? Because I never heard your bands, but I know you were in bands.
Well, I was in high school. I was in a metal band,
Sick.
and I was the singer of the metal band, and I did a lot of screaming and growling and that sort of thing.
Yes. Oh, is it on
Yeah,
YouTube?
it is. It is. I'll send you a
Yeah.
link after the show.
Okay. Yay.
No judgments, please.
Yay.
And then later on, like into college, I started this band that's actually on Spotify.
Ooh.
Um, uh, I'll let people discover it on their own. I don't want to give the band name. It's actually not only is it a terrible band name, like it's just very ungoogleable, but it's like we literally have 0 monthly listeners on Spotify. I checked
Oh.
the other day, like 0 listeners. Like not even like our moms are listening to this anymore.
Oh.
No,
Is
I'm
it
fine with it.
okay?
It doesn't need to be listened to. It's totally fine. But it was like a Ben Folds 5 type of thing. It was piano, bass, and drums. And
Cool.
I played bass and sang in that one, and um, it was fun. It was fun. I liked it, but I think that's when I learned like, because I started doing the booking for our band, and I started, doing all the correspondence and kind of kind of basically being a manager, and that's where like the seed was planted in my head, and it wasn't until I was in law school that I was like, you know, wow, I can actually do this. And I met some I went to law school in Chicago, and at the time Chicago was having this kind of renaissance of hip hop music with like Chance the Rapper and all these people. And I met his manager, Pat, and I was like, Pat has a lot of the same skills that I have, and I can totally see myself doing this. Obviously, you know, not with Chance the Rapper because that's a once in a lifetime kind of artist, but um, I just figured I can make this happen, and this is kind of the thing that I enjoy doing, that I live for, so um yeah, it started with playing in bands, and then it just evolved from there, and that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, is like there's so many roles in the industry that people need to fill, that you don't always need to be the front person or the lead singer or the star of the band. Like there's so many other things you can do, from management to tour management to booking to lights and sound to back of house stuff, front of house stuff, like you know whatever it is that you like doing, like you can do it in the industry. So
Definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
there is. Yeah. And yeah, a lot of people I meet on tours who are part of the crew for the bands we're opening for, or whatever, like sometimes they do different jobs for different bands too. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they do guitar tech for this band, and then they're like the lighting person for this other band, and they're just on tour constantly.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I mean, if that's what you love, it's not a bad way to live, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you played too, because I feel like that's just like, a lot of musicians, I think, you hear all these horror stories like, don't ever work with anyone. They don't even know what it's like to play
Yeah,
music. And
yeah, yeah.
it's like you do.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like, I like that because I feel like sometimes there is this, like you said, with the music lawyers who, like, don't even,
Don't even
maybe
like
not even
music.
like music. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you need, I think if you're like building a team as an artist, or like even, because that's a huge step for people to even work with one extra person.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess that's why you said before, like, even if it's someone who's like super stoked but maybe not as, experienced, would be good. It's just like you need that level of like comfortability with the person or the people you're working with, that you're like, they get it, they get where I'm looking at this from too, you
Yeah,
know
yeah. And
yeah.
just not seeing it as like look, like if I wanted to make money, like I would just go and do traffic accidents or whatever, like obviously I would like money, but I'm doing this because I genuinely love it, and I want to do it, not because it's an easy paycheck, because it's far from that,
Hmm.
so I think finding people on your team that have that mentality of like, all right, we're doing this because we love doing it and not because it's an easy payday. um that's super important, because first off, it's not an easy payday. Like being in the music industry is very difficult. It's tough, and it's super competitive, and you really need to like live and breathe it all day every day, or you're just not gonna make it. Like that's just how it is. You got to be all in. you know
Yeah. I'm curious if you have any insight into like from your managing days? I guess I have my own ideas, kind of, just from people that I meet, but uh, like, how big do you think a band has to be before the band members can kind of survive off of their thing, and their manager, who gets what, like between 10 and 20% depending on their
Yeah.
deal or whatever, like, and like, well, the manager might be working with multiple bands, but like, you know what I mean? Like, for like a band to
Yeah.
actually maybe pay like 4 people to kind of survive for a year, like, do you think they need like 2 million Spotify listeners, or like selling out? Like, what do you
Yeah, I mean,
think?
it's hard to really quantify it exactly because the thing is there's so many different revenue streams, right? So, yeah, you could be doing really well on Spotify, but not so great on touring, or you could be touring really great, packing out shows, but not doing so great on Spotify. You could get licensing or sync money, or you could be getting money from doing remixes, or whatever. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of build up a revenue stream. So um it's hard to say like if there's an exact number of Spotify streams you need, or what have you, but I would just say, like, at least when a manager jumps on board, you should be at a point where you're having to turn down opportunities, right? So
Gotcha.
if you're at a point where, you can kind of do everything that comes your way because there's not that much coming your way, then you probably don't need a manager. But if you're at a point where you're like, oh, should we take this tour, or should we take that tour, or should we take this tour, or you know, should we release the album in March, or should we release the album in October, or whatever? Like, when you're really, you know, confronted with these questions and you're not sure which way to go, that's where, a manager probably makes sense once you're having to turn things down, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but when does that become financially viable? That's a great question.
Yeah,
So,
that's the tricky part.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tricky part.
Yeah,
That is
that's
the
the
tricky
part
part.
where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
timing, because yeah, you can bring a great person onto your team, but then that's a lot of revenue that
Right.
goes out too. But it could be
Yeah.
totally worth it because they could be like helping you build. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that you said March or October, because
Yeah.
the deeper I go into the music industry, it feels like those are like the only two options to release your
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
like,
know. It's
what?
yeah, it's kind of like that, honestly. Um, those are definitely the peak times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Yeah.
like it's like, oh, why not? You can't. No, not April's a little late. I mean, we did that last year,
Yeah.
like April
Yeah.
5th, and it was like, ooh, like you
Yeah.
push it into, because like you got, if you're on the circuit with the booking agents, all that, you do the 1 month headlining tour in the U.S., then you
Right.
do the summer festivals and
Yep.
in Europe, and you want to like be on this loop. But yeah,
Yep.
that was funny. I was like, you're a real industry person when you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it, But those are the kinds of things that people spend a lot of hours debating on and figuring out, And that's not even my expertise, really. Like, there's people smarter than me that know exactly when to roll stuff out, and you know, that's takes some work, takes some planning for sure,
The
All
rollouts are getting longer and longer too.
they are, and that's what people don't understand too about this industry is, like, sometimes you'll see a band like just blow up, or start doing really well, and it seems like it's all of a sudden, and you're like, where did this come from? But really, there's so much that goes in behind the scenes to make that happen, that it's rarely by chance.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. The deeper I go into it, the more I'm like, oh, like, you know, sometimes Gustav will get like an offer in our email, or and we'll see a couple bands that have thrown in, like, oh, maybe, or like, support bands, like, maybe put this person in or that person, because they're about to be on this label, and they're about
right.
to work with so and so, and they're about to be huge, so like
Yeah.
maybe work with them now. And it's like, so if we kind of get this early view into, oh, that band's about to be big, and 4 months later it's like they're everywhere
Yeah, 4 months
suddenly.
later, yeah, suddenly they got the pitchfork right up and everything, and it's
Yeah, and
yeah,
I'm
it's
like, oh,
happening.
surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because usually by the time a band gets to that point, like, the machine's already been rolling. It's like being able to see like a band at like you know, Alphaville or something and point at them and say that band's going to be big, you know, with no like backing, like that takes a certain skill as well. You know,
Yeah.
that's it's a whole separate deal, you know.
Yeah. True.
So
Yeah. Well, Alphaville, shout out Alphaville.
yeah,
My
is
friend
Alphaville still
owns.
around? I haven't been to New York in a long
Yeah,
time. Okay,
our friends bought the place. They
great.
used their pandemic time, money, whatever, and they bought the place. And yeah, they whatever, what's the word? Fixed it up, not fixed it. I'm trying
Cool.
to think, like, made it
Renovated.
snazzier. Yeah,
Okay.
renovated. They
Yeah.
added some
Cool. Cool.
lights, some better sound stuff, you
Great.
know. And yeah, it's a great place to play.
Yeah.
Um, Great place to go. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If anyone's visiting New York anytime soon, Brooklyn, go to Alphaville.
Yeah. Definitely spent a lot of time there in my day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell them what it takes to be a rock star sent you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free drinks on
Yeah. I
me.
was gonna say maybe we'll get some drinks out of it. You know. Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you'd like the people to know before I let you go that you could think of that
The
we didn't
people to
cover?
know.
Yeah.
Well, you can find me on the Instagrams and the interwebs. I'm at real Randy Ojeda on everything. So don't follow the fake Randy Ojeda. Follow the real Randy Ojeda. That's me. And yeah, um, I'm honestly more accessible than you'd think. So if you have questions or if you want to talk to a lawyer, like I actually offer a free 15-minute consultation, and it doesn't sound like 15 minutes is a very long time, but you'd be surprised how much you can get done in a 15-minute chat. You know, so if you just have questions or you're interested in this world at all, or you know something's not quite right with a deal or whatever, like please reach out to me. I'd love to help. I'd love to talk to you. You know, even if we can't work together, I'd still love to talk to you because I just love talking to artists and musicians and you know anybody that's interested in this. So, um, yeah, just reach out to me. Don't be shy.
That's super cool, you. I love that, and I'm gonna link your links and in my
Please.
show description, which everyone should check out because I type a lot of stuff in there,
Show
and
description is
also
very important for that
yeah.
SEO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the 15-minute consultation, I just thought of like the 90s with like 1-800 collect. You're like,
Yeah.
hey, what should my bed agreement say?
Yeah, we can't get into all that in 15 minutes,
I know,
but you
I'm
know,
kidding.
we can get
I
into
just like,
some stuff for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
hey mom, could you pick me up down the street? I'm at Susie's house.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of paying like the dollar.
Right, right. The we had a baby, it's a boy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
That's
kidding.
funny.
Um,
Yeah.
your podcast, is it still rolling or what's going on with it?
Yeah, it is. It is, but it isn't. Like we put out some episodes last year, hoping to do some more episodes this year. It's just kind of when I have time, you know. But
Definitely.
I have a bank of over 100 episodes out there, and you know, um, the original Gustav live video, I think before you were even in the band, is
Yes.
was a Cigar City Radio presentation. So
Yeah.
that's on
Wow.
the YouTubes. You can check that out and see very very early Gustav in
Yeah,
Florida.
that's a great video. Yeah.
It's a fun one. It's a fun
Yeah.
one for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we
Yeah.
have over 100 episodes. A lot of people that you probably know, Mel, and you know a lot of people that I've known over the years. A lot of great bands and some legends too, like some really cool people. Like we had Cindy Wilson from the B-52s on the podcast. Like we had
Ooh.
Brian Bell from Weezer on the podcast. Like some really, really fun episodes. So I think a lot of the content's pretty evergreen. So if you want to go back and check it out, please check it out and enjoy it. But
Awesome. I'll link that
but
too.
but don't you know don't get too crazy about new episodes because
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
may or
yeah.
may not happen.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, podcast a lot of work.
A
I
podcast is
know.
a lot of work. So kudos to you. You know, you've done what's like 17 episodes, 18 episodes, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll be number
Okay.
19.
I'll
Yeah.
be number 19.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
So see that takes a lot of work in and of itself just to do that many, you know.
Yeah.
So keep it up. It's it's needed. You know, I think people really, really enjoy these kinds of experiences. So
Absolutely.
you know, I'm happy to come on anytime you need me. You know,
Awesome.
I'll be happy to join. I am all about podcasts. I'll sit here all day and do podcasts.
All right, everyone, you heard that. If you want Randy back, comment 100 times.
Yes, shout me out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yeah,
And,
it was. It was so good to see you again. I'm sure.
know.
I'm sure we'll. I mean, something's got to align. We'll be in the same place soon. I would hope.
I know. Well, you're in like Florida still.
I'm in Florida. Yeah.
Okay. We just never make it there. We
I
only
know.
went
No one
that
does.
once. Yeah.
No one does.
And
It's fine.
even my grandpa lives down there. He's like, why don't you play down here? And I'm like, I don't know.
It's tough.
It just doesn't happen.
It's tough. But one day it will happen, or I'll be in New York at some point soon, or we'll see each other at a festival. It'll happen. I know. I know.
We'll hang at Alphaville.
Yes, we will. Yeah, for sure.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of What It Takes to Be a Rock Star. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode. All right, bye-bye.